These are a bunch of things you can do to improve your photography while spending zero money, meaning you can quite easily take better pictures on the camera you already have. Stick around until the end and I'll tell you which of these has made the biggest difference to my photography over the last few years. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Firstly, I just want to make it clear that when it comes to taking good photos, skill is a lot more important than gear is. I have banged on about this so much over the last 12 months, particularly in this video. And I know it's not sexy advice and buying new gear is a shit ton of fun, but the truth is that a good image is 80% photographer and 20% the camera. I think until you're truly limited by what your kit can do, there's just no real need to upgrade. Luckily, the advice in this video can be followed with any camera or lens combination, so let's just get straight into it. First off, quite simply, go out with your camera. Take it everywhere you go. I covered this in my video about having an everyday camera and the importance of taking it everywhere with you, but so many of us have cameras that spend most of their lives on a shelf or in a bag, sad and unused. I think one of the main reasons behind this is the so-called rules, and in particular in this case the myth that you can only shoot in golden hour or blue hour, which is a complete lie. These are all photos that I've taken in the middle of the day. I'm guessing a lot of people watching this are landscape photographers primarily, and believe it or not, this does apply to you too. I think we often forget that not every shot has to be your best shot. They don't even have to be published online. They don't even have to leave your hard drive. What they are though is an opportunity to learn and an opportunity to get better. I think one of the main issues with shooting outside at these times is you don't often get the optimal lighting conditions, but poor lighting conditions are often a great opportunity to practice. It might not be your dream subject, and it probably won't be in dream lighting conditions, but there is always an opportunity to shoot. You can always be practicing composition, and we'll come on to that a bit more later, or learning the ins and outs of your camera, or practicing your technique, or creating images that you can practice your editing on. Every shot you take, no matter what time of day it is just another small incremental step in you improving at photography. I think a lot of us, me included earlier in my career, would benefit from taking the mindset of it's fine to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes. And just remove the expectation that every shot has to be amazing, which I think social media has pushed us in the direction of. Take your time, practice and learn. And putting that work in will prepare you for when you are in a dream location with amazing light, because that's the worst time to not be comfortable with what you're doing, to be fumbling around and to make mistakes. You want to get all of those out of the way beforehand. A few years ago, I found myself to be guilty of only photographing certain types of landscapes in certain types of conditions, under the false premise that concentrating on that quality and the level of quality would improve my photographic output. And I was totally wrong. Over the last year or so, I've embraced different genres and I've taken my camera to places I wouldn't normally take it, in conditions I wouldn't normally shoot in. And I've learned so much from doing this, and I've had so much fun in the process. And I've actually found that the output of my decent shots has increased as a result. You have to experiment and try different things to improve. And I think that our open mindset and a camera in hand everywhere you go is key to that. The next tip is to learn. And there are so many free resources now to learn from, and you don't need me to tell you that because you're here. But the ability to learn online now is greater than it ever has been before. But the important thing is not just to learn, it's also to practice. And this is something I was so guilty of earlier in my career. I was so hungry to learn everything I could about photography. I read so many books. I was subscribed to loads of magazines. I spent my life on forums on the internet learning every little thing that I could, but I just wasn't putting it into practice. It was almost like I knew too much. I'd go out on shoots and there was so much information buzzing around my head that I just didn't know what to do, and my photos suffered as a result, and that continued for quite a long time until I could process all of that information. Back then I was just completely paralysed and overwhelmed by information overload. Taking control of your learning is a really sensible thing to do. So pick something that you want to improve on, something quite specific. Learn about that, practice that, and repeat until you're comfortable with it. Then pick the next thing to learn and do the same with. Don't try and do everything at once. Doing this will also help you get comfortable with your camera at a sensible pace. You want to be able to use your camera without really thinking about it, and the best way to generate that muscle memory is to do it again until you are operating it without even thinking about it. Also, don't forget the opportunity to learn from other photographers too, whether that be photographers that shoot the same kind of stuff as you, or photographers that shoot something completely different, because you can often get ideas from the strangest of places. You can view photographers' work online, or in galleries, or in books. But try and look at it and work out why the images worked, and then see if you can apply that to your own photography. I found as well that there are also opportunities to learn in places that you wouldn't even consider. Over the last couple of years, I've found that TV and film have been a really big influence on my photography. I've been paying a lot of attention to how professional cinematographers frame and compose images, and I think that's influenced how I now think about composition in the field. By constantly paying attention to how shots are framed, how symmetry is used, how leading lines and the rule of thirds are used, and how different patterns and textures are used in shots, I think it can have a really powerful influence on not just our understanding of composition, but also how it inspires the shots we take ourselves. The same can go for lighting in the same kind of productions as well, but that probably goes beyond the realms of this video. But if you're interested in hearing more about how I use TV and cinema to influence my shooting, let me know below and I might make a video on that in the future. The next one is editing, and I cannot stress enough the importance of editing and knowing how to edit properly in terms of improving the quality of the images that you have. Editing can often make or break an image, and I'm not sure a lot of us pay enough attention to this, because we'd rather be out shooting than sitting at a desk putting all our time into editing photos. Sometimes it's just not fun, it can be tedious and it can be frustrating, especially if we've got a lot of images to work through. But going back to my last point about learning, if we learn how to edit up front and keep practicing that, it will do our photography so many favours in the long term. I know I'm discussing things to do here that are free, and majority of photographers that I know use Lightroom, which obviously comes at a cost, but there are editing packages that are completely free, things like Snapseed, Lightroom Mobile and GIMP on a desktop as well. Putting the time into learning editing is completely worth it, and if we are having a camera that we take everywhere with us, we'll have an abundance of images to practice our editing on as well. You'll also get better at learning what works and what doesn't work, both in terms of the actual images themselves and the editing of them. The next thing to do is to find a community, and I don't mean one in social media. There are an abundance of photography communities out there if you're willing to look, whether you prefer Reddit or Discord or Facebook or just an old school forum. There is something for every type of shooter out there. Being part of a community like this helps you learn from others, it can offer you inspiration, and can also give yourself insight into your own photography if you're brave enough to put your images forward for constructive criticism. Being vulnerable like that can be hard, but it's a fantastic catalyst toward improvement. I spent years on a forum with a dedicated photography thread, and I credit that to where my photography is at now. These communities often run challenges and competitions as well, which not just push you out of your comfort zone, but can also offer you something to aim for on a weekly or a monthly basis. I'm going to get onto a few smaller practices that I've implemented that have really helped me over the last couple of years, but before that I just want to thank this week's sponsor, which is Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace for well over 5 years now, and they're a fantastic platform for building your own website. It's a great place to show off your portfolio, to host a blog, or to have an online store, and it's just so easy to do. They've got a new Blueprint AI service which can make setting up a new website from scratch ridiculously simple. If I can do it, I honestly believe that you can as well. And it's because of Squarespace that I've managed to get my online store off the ground this year. I'm hoping to add to this in terms of potentially a member area later this year, and Squarespace has all the tools for me to implement that just as easily as I've done everything else. If you go to squarespace.com/Rick Bevington or click on the link below, you'll get 14 days free and 10% off. It's a great way to showcase your work, and if I didn't believe in them, I wouldn't have been using them for as long as I have. The first of these mini tips is to walk more. You may have seen my penchant for walking in my last video, but I'm certainly not suggesting you do anything quite like that. Walking's great for exploring not just your local area, but any area, and finding things that maybe haven't been shot all that much before. If you're constantly exploring your local area, you'll get used to seeing things in different conditions and in different lighting. And if you've got your camera with you all the time, which you should do, you'll be able to shoot these and compare them from one season to another and see what a difference that makes. That's a really good way to gain appreciation for how dramatically lighting can change an image. Walking also helps us to see, and being able to see is incredibly important if you want to be a good photographer. It's actually unbelievable how many people go through life without properly seeing, without looking around and appreciating every little detail of the world around us. Look up, look down, look behind you, just look everywhere. When you really take the time to try and see, so many details leap out at you that would previously have gone unnoticed. And this ties in brilliantly with walking. To be able to see, we need to slow down. And walking is one of the best ways to do this. Which leads nicely to the next one, which is to put your phone away. Unless that is, it's your phone that you're shooting on. Phones have a unique way of distracting us to the extent where they pull us completely out of our surroundings and completely into the device. How many times have you walked along whilst on your phone and then looked up and haven't really been sure how you've got from A to B? I feel like if you're checking your phone even just periodically, it completely takes us from the presence, removes our ability to see, and therefore does have an impact on our photography and what we're trying to capture. If you want to be able to see, leave your phone at home. I think the biggest change for me over the last couple of years has been the everyday camera philosophy. Doing this has really opened my eyes to shooting in different locations, in different conditions, and at different times of day, and it's taken me from a place where landscape photography was my priority to shooting more, well, I don't know how to describe it, life, I suppose. I've got an incredible amount of joy from this process, and it's all come about from a bit of a mindset shift and an intention to try and become a better photographer. A lot of it has been based around my life situation as well. With young kids, that doesn't necessarily tie in with landscape photography just due to the antisocial nature of the hours needed to do it. They don't really tie in very well with school drop-off times, for example. So I was looking for a way of being able to creatively express myself at different times of day, and this has been a fantastic way of being able to do that. So I challenge you over the next few weeks to walk and to see and to take your camera everywhere and see what impact that has on your photography and your understanding of your photography. My hope is that you'll gain a lot from it, and that'll inspire you to keep going with it. And just remember, you can always shoot, but you don't always have to publish.